Now, what's up, everybody? It is KnewNeverYou here, and today we are doing another episode of KnewNeverYou Features. And start off this episode, we have a new guest, Hope Matheson, aka Mrs. KnewNeverYou, for everybody that watched the previous box openings, packs openings of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Tifa to the people at my local Yu-Gi-Oh! Card shop. This is what she looks like. I told you. And she is also, most importantly, my fiance. We've been
That's
together
right.
for 4 years and we are happily engaged. I almost said married, but we're working towards that part. Anyway, that's enough of my rambling. What brings you here today, baby?
To talk about toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity. That's a tongue twister for
Yes.
me. Um, so
Basically, don't always look on the bright side.
mm, so say that again. It's what now?
Toxic positivity,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, don't always look on the bright side of things.
Okay. So what exactly I guess happened to make you want to come on the channel and talk about that topic? Because if I try to say it, I probably won't say it right.
2020 and 2021 have been crazy for everyone. We went through a pandemic, obviously, but I think it's important for people in this social media age to understand that having that positive attitude always on 24/7 365 is it's exhausting.
So what I guess, you always hear um, stay positive, keep pushing forward. So are these like taboo statements that we've told ourselves to, I guess, get out of slumps to the point where now you're not even being realistic with anything?
Yes. I think that's a good question. I think there's a balance that you have to have between encouraging yourself to move forward and not putting on that fake front or that fake mask or face to please others, not yourself.
Right. So is so many questions. Um you said 2020 and 2021 has been an exhausting year for everybody. Um I'm assuming you're referring to the coronavirus.
Yes, the pandemic
Okay.
um, affected a lot of people. And I think that we became more attached to our social lives and social media when that happened because we had nowhere to go. We were all stuck at home.
Um, but do you think we really, I guess, as a people, got more attached, or do you think we just relapsed?
I think it's always been evolving the more that we were involved in the internet. So I don't think it's a recent issue. I think it's just becoming more like worldwide known.
The social media part or the toxic positivity
Both,
part?
both. And in one direction you can go with the platforms that have taken off since more people have been at home or the apps that have been created over the past couple of years. Just internet as a whole, I feel like has kind of shielded us or blinded us to understand that with emotions is a positive and a negative, but to stay more on topic of where
Mm,
we are right now, just the toxic positivity that people, I guess, portray.
right.
They should portray more of their real lives and not what the standard people are setting.
Um, so I guess we'll address both of those topics, the standard and the reality of, I guess, people and in general. Um, I don't really know which one to address first, so I guess we'll do alphabetical order. Um, R comes before S. So the real version of people from your, I guess, view of things, what do you think is the reason that people have been or are portraying a fake persona versus the real them?
Personally, I feel like it's that influencer vibe that people are giving off, or that lifestyle that people try to keep up. It's, to me, when you're avoiding the negativity or avoiding those unpleasant emotions that you experience.
Right. Such as sadness,
For sure.
depression, all the emotions I know and I can't think of them. There's one, regret, shame. That's what I was thinking of. Shame. I think shame is a big one for a lot of people. Um, like when they do something, they feel bad for it, but they feel like that's like the determining factor for the rest of their life. Um, so anyway, what I mean, because that's a broad, I guess, or this is a broad subject to the point where, it influences everything, like you said, and social media plays a big part. But why why do you think that, as far as the people not wanting to be themselves, is what we're going to touch on still, um to the point where people create a standard? So we're going to mix both topics, that people create a standard to kind of flow away from their reality. Do you think it's more of a, I'm going to create this, so even if I am being my real self, nobody knows? Or do you think it's just like, I'm going to create this standard and just make a rabbit hole, so if people want to know who I am, there's so much you got to go through to find out that at the end you don't really even care anymore?
Um, I think that rabbit hole could be avoided if we're referring to the standard that social media has set. Um, it's that always keeping those positive things, positive vibes, rejecting anything that may trigger your negative emotions. And so I think that we can still create a platform for ourselves, but not just creating this mirror or mirage or fake image of, um, you always have to be in this character.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to be yourself, and produce that influencer page or following or whatever it may be. But I think the toxic positivity is just damaging to a younger generation, our generation, older generation, because um, you're not really giving yourself that moment to experience things that you've dealt with. For example, I think that if you avoid any of the negativity in your life, you're going to deal with it now or later, regardless of you wanting to do it or not. It's going to happen. So you might as well face it now before you're older and you've got other domino effects that it plays a part of.
Right. You mentioned three different generations. I don't think the generation above us struggles with it as much. Especially like the generation of like people like Gordon Ramsay that kind of just say whatever they feel, and that's just that. Either you take it or you leave it. I think the older generation are more realistic than the generation below us, and I think our generation is kind of like in a standstill where half of the generation is trying to be realistic, and then the other half is living in a fantasy matrix, if you will. Um,
I do know some of, I guess, my acquaintances or people that I've come in contact with through work or, lifestyle, whatever it may be, previous jobs. some of our older generation who is trying to keep up with the younger generation. And I think that some of the toxic positivity that they experienced was the older generation, they didn't discuss anything outside of the normal or the cookie cutter family lifestyle. And it was always, you say something positive, you're going to get through this. You push yourself with this positivity and you're going to cancel out any of the negative that you have. You're just going to keep pushing forward, plowing through. But I think it affects anyone and everyone who sweeps things under the rugs and doesn't want to deal with it. Those skeletons in their closet, as they call them.
Right. And I believe that stuff is a huge contributor to people's depression, sadness, and all these other mental diseases that a lot of people are having, because there's only so much that we can just use the brain and compare it to a plate, one of those trash plates that you see in the commercials where you put the spaghetti and meatballs and then half the plate folds. The brain's kind of like that, where it's you can only put so much onto it before it crumbles and it snaps. And it's not like a blood cell. It's not like it reconstructs itself
Right.
as fast as a blood cell. Blood cells, there's millions, billions, and they just multiply like rabbits. Once the brain's damaged, it's like fixing a car. It has to go through trial and error and figure out that, okay, this isn't what it was before, but I don't know how to get back to where I was before. So I think you're definitely onto something when you say that dealing with it now versus later. And I understand that some people can't deal with it now, and some people just want to deal with it later. And
Yeah.
I guess there may be a right or wrong way. That's one of those things that I think it just applies different for everybody. But as far as the standard, I've definitely seen, one of the reasons that I got off of social media is because it seemed like everybody wanted to be the same person,
Right.
to the point now where you can kind of look at somebody and just tell, like, all right, this person's this and this person's that. This is how this person portrays themselves. So I'm going to assume this is how they act. And unfortunately, now it's pretty accurate. Like, if you see like a dude wearing skinny jeans and a truck fit hat, you're just going to assume he's a skater or a BMXer or something like that. And 9 times out of 10, now it's accurate because I think people are kind of losing that individuality and people are afraid to be themselves. So I guess the standard and being the real you kind of coincides with each other. What are your thoughts on the standard, Instagram standard, Facebook standard, Kardashian standard? Oh.
I think that people should be whoever they want to be, but be honest with themselves. To me, this is more along the lines of accepting difficult emotions and understanding that you can control your emotions. You can deal with the negative, but still be positive. But it's just that toxicity. It's where it becomes the issue for me.
Mm-hmm.
It almost seems as if you reach that standard and you have to just stay there for the rest of your
Excuse me.
influencer lifestyle or whatever lifestyle they choose. But I feel as if it's affecting them in the wrong ways, because you can still be yourself, like I said before, and still accept those emotions. And like you said, this could branch off in a lot of different directions. But I think understanding that if you do accept those emotions, it's how you deal with it as well afterwards that really kind of sets the tone, because emotions are not all good and they're not all bad.
Right. It's kind of like enzymes. There's some that help and there's some that
Yeah,
destroy. Um,
that good fat, that bad
yeah.
fat.
What do they call it? Carbohydrates. Delicious.
I think a lot of people get that standard idea in their mind and feel as if they have to live up to these standards, but not wearing that signature piece or whatever's popular. Um, I think that kind of gets in the way of people's perspective, because you should be able to be yourself. Something you said the other day was things that go mainstream and then everybody jumps on the bandwagon and then it's just kind of like ruined. Um, Sometimes it does get taken a little too far, I think, but I think a lot of this also plays into the effect of not just your personal lives, but your relationships with your partners, your families, your friends, your work environment. Knowing that even if you're posting that post or video or making that post or video, um, you don't have to pretend to be something you're not,
Mm-hmm.
because you're only showing people a small glimpse of your life on that social media platform or whatever you're using, but it's something that should be relatable, I think.
Right.
Because I feel like it's almost toxic if it's not.
Well, it's kind of lying.
Right. And not just other people, but yourself too. I think a lot of people get so wrapped up in that world that they don't understand. They're trying to prove, I guess, to someone else that they are happy when they're really not. I think dealing with that unhappiness or sadness or any emotions that we've named, it's kind of like lifting a weight off your shoulders.
Yeah. But I think the problem with being honest is when you try to reach this standard or you're not true to yourself and you do change or try to change, it's kind of like you gain weight and now you're trying to lose weight. Your body has to get into a rhythm and it hurts because now you have people attacking you for being honest, for being who you really are,
Yeah.
instead of people encouraging you for being who you really are. But I think a deeper issue is a lot of people don't know who they are to begin with.
True.
Um, I I'll take myself for an example. I was a nerd before it was cool, before it was mainstream. I was kindergarten with my pink Game Boy playing Pokemon red, blue, and yellow trio. And I would just sit by myself during recess and play Pokemon. And people would make fun of me, say I was weird, a dork, gay, whatever. And I mean, sure, it hurt. I'm 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And back then I was pretty hefty guy. So I get the criticism. I get having to deal with all that pain and that frustration. But it's like you say, either you deal with it now or you deal with it later. Unfortunately for me, I dealt with it later, late teens, early adulthood. And I mean, you make a lot of mistakes. But, you know, I get that everybody makes mistakes. Um, but they're human wise, there's just some mistakes that humans deem as like the 7 deadly sins of all mistakes. It's like, let's say you cheat on somebody. It's like you're a cheater for the rest of your life. Like, I get that you made a mistake. You probably shouldn't have done that, but you didn't murder anybody. You probably murdered somebody's feelings, but it's not like you killed somebody. You chose the wrong path, But it's like either, I mean, that's one of those emotions. Like, you not forgiving somebody is really just a road to resentment, and then you resent that person. It makes you resent everybody else to the point where you're afraid to date, and you just kind of lose sense of yourself because you're not around anybody. So all those moments where you would go out with your friends, and if you're a woman, go out with your girls, you don't do that anymore because, well, I don't want to talk to anybody because that may lead to a situation where I get hurt again. Um,
It's
and
always good to protect yourself,
right, right,
guard your, you have to care for yourself first or nobody else will.
right.
So I think it's good that you experience that
Mm-hmm.
and understand that the situation that you put yourself in, you can avoid some of those negative situations. But I think forgiveness, like you mentioned, is the key to this toxic positivity.
Right.
Learning to forgive yourself, not just others, but understanding that you are human and people do make mistakes. And sometimes we suffer way more than others because we kind of put ourselves in the situations, or the situations may be different for people. But um, some people are religious and that's good. Some people aren't, that's good too. But I think that if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything.
Right. But if you're going to stand for something, please know what it means. Don't just stand for something because you want to stand for something. That's kind of pointless. Pointless.
I think that it's beneficial to look on the bright side of things and find that silver lining in all of life experiences. But I also think it's important to acknowledge and listen to your emotions when they aren't pleasant. Um, no one can be a ray of sunshine 24/7. It just, people are raw, they experience things, and I think people should share that.
Yeah, but yeah. Yeah.
Humans just don't work that way. I know there are a lot of positive people that I know, and I know those positive people have been through hardships, tough times in their lives, or a dark time or a dark space, and that's okay. They're allowed to feel that. They need to feel that. Um, I think that your emotions can get in the way of your understanding of yourself and those around you, and it kind of clutters our mind or clouds our judgment. But sometimes after we've experienced different things, we see it through a different sight, I guess.
No, I get what you're saying. Um, that I think that unknown is what a lot of people are afraid of.
Absolutely. I'm
So
guilty of it.
yeah, so it's like, okay, I got to deal with this pain. Um, what's an example everybody deals with? Death in the family. Somebody really close to you dies. Um, to the point you don't want to get close to anybody else again because you don't want to feel that same loss ever again. But in doing so, you hold yourself back from all these glorious moments that you could have had, but you never knew you were going to have because you never tried it. And so you get older and then you start to regret. And then you try to make up for lost time. And it's like you're just scrambled all over the place because you're trying to be your young self while being your old self. And you turn yourself around. And that's what it's all about, the hokey pokey. It made sense to me.
Back
So I
to
feel like
the
that's what's
topic.
important.
um, so one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this today is, of course, it's something I've experienced. I think at some point, everyone has experienced
Mm-hmm.
toxic positivity. Um, but I think it's okay. I think that you almost need to condition yourself to retrain your mind and your brain to think differently than some of the standards that we've discussed and what the media or lifestyles are set for today. It's some people say find a therapist. Some people say, change your settings, change your surroundings because you won't see change unless you do something different. So if you feel like you're not in a meaningful relationship with someone, or you feel like friends that you have may be toxic, it might be the time for you to kind of step back and reevaluate those relationships.
Yeah, I think I suffer from toxic negativity. I'm extremely negative. Um, but yeah, it's very true to reevaluate all the situations that you're in, whether it be relationships, friendships, job, whatever, because
Yeah,
it is very scary to think about what your life would be without somebody else, especially if you have an established relationship. But I mean, at the same time, if it's not benefiting either of you or nobody, then just think about how detrimental that is to the future. And you can't get any of the time that you spent back. So
absolutely. I think that's something that you realize as you get older is investing your time and your energy into things that are good for you, that are positive for you. And like I said before, it's okay to enjoy that positive energy or vibe or whatever you're getting or giving. But just remember that sometimes those good emotions and those bad emotions are both there.
right. On a side note that does deal with this, I know there's a lot of people that um, feel like they didn't grow up with role models, and so the toxic positivity is kind of what you kind of went to because you feel like you didn't have any role models. Um, I think that the standard of role model is kind of diluted and not really true to what the word means. I don't necessarily think that somebody has to be there 24/7 to be your role model. I think that, somebody that just influences you to be a better person, to be who you are, um, things
Yeah,
like that, to embrace the good with the bad, because I mean, we've been saying this whole video. It's like you can't really have one without the other. It would be pretty bland if we did. And the result would probably be the same, because if you're focusing on one, you're not really focusing on the other. Um,
yeah,
but I think that unfortunately, a lot of people use negative emotions to kind of dilute the positive to the point where it creates toxic positivity, because they're trying to mix the two and not trying to deal with them as two separate entities.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I mean, like, I know in the black community, for the most part, therapy is kind of like a no. Like, we don't discuss things outside the household. That's a taboo. I
it's
mean,
very frowned upon.
yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. And if you do go see a therapist and you're an African American, it's like, what
You're
did
not
you
strong
what did you tell them?
individual.
Right, right. And I mean, some people, like you said, they get religion. Some people go to therapy. Um, if you're trying to be a better person through legal means and meaningful means, I don't necessarily think that it's terrible if you're out here just talking to a therapist or trying to find God or whatever. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's, you know, just because somebody else doesn't agree with it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Um, but also, you take opinions into account. Um, you're
For
not
sure.
always right. I'm not always right. And there's definitely been somebody that you're going to meet in your life that's been through the exact same thing as you, whether you know it or not. So any pieces of gems that you can get from a bystander, passerby, a random person, you don't have to take the opinion or the advice to heart, but don't disregard it either, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I think some of the examples that I had in my life and some of the personal experiences that I went through were kind of the standard for me of what not to do.
Right.
Um, so I saw some examples that I felt like they weren't right. I just knew something wasn't right, and I just told myself, okay, so I may not have the best examples, but at least I know what not to do.
Right.
I think sometimes we have those role models that we hold to a very high standard. We look up to them. We really go to them for advice. And like you said, sometimes they have great advice. Sometimes they have advice that you can
Trash.
can listen to, but you don't always have to take it. But I think some people also spiral when they see some of their role models that have been for years, mess up and like prove to you that they're also humans. We have to realize that as a human being, we are built and installed with that, what's good, what's bad. It's just listening to that. I think going back to the topic of being upbeat and positive at times is important, but understanding that it's okay to deal with difficult feelings, people hurting you, um, seeing those role models mess up and understanding that sometimes the examples that you get are not always going to be the perfect examples and they may be of what not to do, but I think setting goals for yourself is something that can help with this issue. Writing your goals down is something that's been very helpful because you're not just coming up with these goals, you're actually setting these goals and writing them down and sticking to it. And I think that having that positive attitude is good. I think not being so hard on yourself is good, but also dealing with anything difficult that comes through your life.
Right. Yeah, definitely writing it down helps that manifestation. But it's something you just said that trying to reach your goals. Um, when you write them down, you set them, you do all that. You should definitely keep in mind that you may not complete the task the first time, the first 10 times, the first 100 times. And just go ahead and establish that in your mind from the get-go. So when you do mess up or it doesn't happen or you fail X amount of times, you don't quit. Um, because I think that's a big part people don't tell you about making goals is that they don't always happen the first
That's
X
right.
amount of time. So you can write it down. It doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But if you quit, then it's definitely not gonna happen. And quitting is a result of you not dealing with that negative emotion. I'll give a couple examples. I always wanted to be an actor growing up. Will Smith was the guy for me. Some may even say I modeled my personality after him. Probably. Don't know. Who cares? Not me. But I was in the film industry for about 7 years, and it just got to the point where the environment wasn't enough to keep me there. Maybe if I was, acting more so than doing crew work, I would have stayed. But that highlight of seeing people on the red carpet doing the interviews, making it just seem like, oh man, this is a breeze, but not really knowing what's going on in the background. Now I'm doing it in the background for 7 years. I'm like, this sucks. This is this is not this is not what I want to do forever. And so, I mean, I kind of gave up the dream of being an actor. I mean, I still write, but maybe one day I can, produce and do my own thing. But as far as the other stuff goes, I think I'll pass on because it's just my personality doesn't mix with a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. And I just, my moral compass is very deep. So once something happens that I disagree with on multiple occasions, I can't do it anymore. Um, so that was my way of dealing with that negative um, emotion that I didn't know that was going to come because I was focused on all the highlights, but I never noticed what happened in the background. I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but there was a point where wasn't really dating this woman, but we were talking. I don't really know what people call that because I don't know. Anyway, and something happened. Um, Feelings were hurt, mine really, and I told Corey, and I think I told my mom. I was like, I'm just done. Like, there's no point in putting yourself out there to get hurt like this. Like, it sucks. I'm not doing this again. It's not worth it. So I think for about 2 years, I wouldn't even talk to women. If we were out and somebody was talking to me, I just leave. I just get up and move. I was drinking a lot, so I'm not interested. So the nicest thing for me to do at the moment was leave. So when we met, it was kind of weird because I was still in that phase of, women are the devil. Because I don't even think we got along that night because you were rude. And, you know, that was me not dealing with that hurt, that pain from X a while ago. And that's not fair to the people that wanted to get to know me. And that's not fair to myself because, you know, it happened, can't control it, whatever, move on. Easier said than done, but here we are, Had I not got over that situation, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be engaged. So, it helps dealing with that negative emotion, um, you know, but also being realistic that, it's possible for things to get better, but things don't just get better. You got to kind of put some work in.
Yes. And I think that's where that conditioning your mindset is very important. You mentioned failure earlier, and that's a big part of your success in life, period, whether it be work, friends, relationships. That is part of your success is failing, reminding yourself that everyone fails. And that's not something that's very talked about, but it happens. And I think that if you fail, you are one step closer to succeeding.
Well, we'll agree
I
to
mean, in my
disagree.
business aspect, I've failed a lot. And it's a healthy way of coping, I think, to understand if you failed, that you, again, know what not to do next time.
Right. Um, I know failure for me is a little different. I've always been a perfectionist, even when I was a kid. I want to do everything right the first time. Really, because I don't like doing things twice. Um,
Oh, I completely understand that.
so It started with video games, Pokemon. We go back, get to that first gym leader. I'm trying to beat him the first time because when you get beat and you're a kid and like you're jumping into something and you don't have any help, and it's basically like learning how to swim and you get destroyed, like your heart is crushed. And I think that translated into the rest of my life to this day. I mean, like I just opened the LLC and I am terrified of not doing everything right with tax forms, sales, marketing, and it's scary. So that whole failure thing for me in that aspect is like the grim reaper on my back because I feel like if I fail, that's just more that I have to go back and fix. And I already feel like I'm crunched for time as it is. So
Yeah, but you have to go through those failures in life.
don't say that.
You have to, because like you said, it's something that people don't really talk about because it's that negative part that we don't want to focus on, which is still circulating back to that toxic positivity. You cannot keep pushing yourself to where you die before you even see that LLC.
Right.
You've got to understand that sometimes you have to take a step back. You have to reevaluate what you're doing, and you've got to figure it out. You've got to deal with that negativity that comes with that positive.
Right.
For every positive, there's a negative.
I guess so. Ions, neurons, electrons. No, I mean,
Protons,
protons?
I guess so.
I mean, they were all tons and ons and
Nerd.
90s. Um, but I mean,
Eon.
for me, I when I first started making music back in high school, that was my way of coping with everything negative that I've ever dealt with. And then I translated that into poetry. And I'm not real big on creating personas, but it got to the point where I felt like I was going to be famous. And it's a possibility I still might. And I just wanted to separate that negativity from myself so nobody could ever bring it back to me, to the point where I had to start putting my face on it. And now people know it's me. And a lot of this stuff is not my life, but just things I've seen. But a lot of stuff is my life. And I remember I put out my first book, Apologies for Apathy, on Amazon. Cop that. Um, and just talking about all the apathy that a young man goes through, i.e., me, um, was kind of hard to edit myself because a lot of that stuff I'd forgotten about, never dealt with, but I forgot about it. And just how deep and raw and like how real I had to be with myself when I was writing it was kind of difficult to cope with being a grown man. Seeing that, that's all I dealt with as a teenager. Um, so I definitely feel like I failed myself in that instance of time, that span of years, for not asking for help or not seeking guidance, because really my ego and my pride felt like I was really too good to ask for help. And that's another thing I think is a standard in society is, I think you said it earlier, um, people are just afraid to ask for help because if you go see a therapist or you ask for help, people think you're weak. And
Yeah.
really, if you look throughout history, everybody that was somebody had help.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody did it by themselves. Caesar, Nero, Alexander the Great. If you want to take it through mythology, Alexander the Great. I mean, all these people, like they had a support system because, I mean, it's hard enough carrying your life, but it's even harder when things happen and it feels like you're carrying the world on your back and you don't know where to turn. So if you can't deal with the negatives and the positive and try to find a balance, you definitely should find somebody, a friend, an accountability partner, therapist, whatever, whatever is going to help you get over the hurdle. I definitely encourage you to do that because, the more people are honest and real with themselves, the easier it is for not only themselves, but the people around them. And then that translates into the rest of the world and everything gets better.
Yeah.
What was that, a mouthful?
Well, I think something that we talked about is the failure and how it's traumatizing and how it does push people to quit, but you're never going to get what you want if you don't push through. And pushing through in a healthy mindset is really what the focus should be on. You have to shift your mindset to overcome it. And it is hard. Nothing easy is really worth it, I guess. It feels a lot better once you have pushed through something, when you've done it your own. You feel a lot more proud of yourself, a lot more appreciative of what you've accomplished. And my garden, for example, if I don't work on it consistently, it's not going to grow. It's not going to develop. But, we've had some troubleshooting moments where we've learned what to do and what not to do, but it's really cool to see the product of what you've been investing all of your time in, the fruits of your labor. It's really cool to see something that you have manifested or you have really pushed through to make that accomplishment happen. It's very rewarding.
And it is very true that you will not notice it until it's actually happened.
Right.
That whole process, and people tell you to enjoy the journey, bump that. The journey sucks. I'm just going to tell you now, you won't know it sucks. You won't know it was great until the end, but that journey sucks. And if it's not sucking, then it's probably not the right journey.
Not all journeys suck, but about 90% of them, yes.
You try to do some push-ups and tell them the journey is fun.
We're not talking about the gym.
Ooh.
You don't want to see these guns.
No, this is rated E for everyone.
Everyone.
But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that something that people should also remember is what you surround yourself with is essentially who you're going to be. And something that I've been really using to guide myself through some of these hard times are trash in, trash out. I mean, literally, your mental, your physical. If you're putting trash in, you're going to get trash out. And that's something that someone that I've been inspired by has told me. And I'm clinging on to it because it is true. And it's really something that people, I think, need to evaluate, because some of this stuff that they've got as far as TV now, it's just a joke. And I think we've seen some recent television that was based on a social media experiment and how much social media really affects people's lives, and it's mind-blowing. And it's hard to detach yourself from some of those platforms and lifestyles and whatever it may be, but I think a lot of people try to be something that they're not, and it's just very unhealthy.
Yeah, if you don't know who you are, there's nothing wrong with figuring it out now.
That's true.
Take all the time you need. You only get one life. Make it mean what
You
you want to
don't
mean.
risk anything, you won't gain anything.
Yeah. And I've risked a lot. But all I want for Christmas is a PlayStation 5.
You got it.
Oh. With that being said, yeah, like she said, if you don't risk, if you don't risk anything, like nothing just, well, for a lot of us, nothing just falls in our lap. So, key points from this whole TED Talk is, if it's hard for you to deal with the positive, the negative, the in between, seek help, get help, talk to somebody, a friend, a therapist, the Lord, whoever.
KnewNeverYou.
Sort it out. Sort it out. Write it down. Get a diary. I have a diary. I've had one since I was 13 years old. I got a few actually.
Or journal or whatever it
Yeah,
is
whatever
that
you
you
want to call it. Notes. If you feel like a diary is too girly and you're a dude, notes. Um, Write a novel, poetry, write some songs. Go outside, enjoy nature. Just look at the world for what it is. Go, watch bees build a hive or
I've heard that if you put your feet on the grass, physically let your feet touch the grass, it immediately changes your mindset from where you were to a different perspective.
I think I'm gonna just start going to work with no shoes on, man. I'm
Won't get the
upset.
Rona for real.
Grass. But yeah, I know
Yeah.
one big thing for me is every time I get ready to write a book and I need to sort the negative and the positive from each other is I always go and watch birds. Birds are my favorite animals next to snakes. Um,
Good
but
to know.
but no, I always go watch birds do just bird things. And just watching nature be nature helps me, clear my mind and get back to what I need to do. So, that's part of getting to know yourself. You kind of have to date yourself, if that makes sense.
You
Find out
cannot escape yourself.
right. So, find out what you like, find out what you don't like. And I mean, it's okay to be weird. Um, just don't
For
be
sure.
out here doing,
Exposing yourself.
yeah, illegal things.
That's right. There's consequences for that.
There's laws for a reason. Anyway, but thank you so much, Sweetums, for coming on the show.
Thank you for
Hopefully,
having me.
you're welcome. Hopefully this reaches somebody out there having a hard time, and I know it was a lot. We touched on a lot of topics. I think I'm frozen.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I think I'm frozen. Anyway,
Am I frozen?
no, we touched on a lot of topics. So hopefully, uh sorry it's long. But, oh no, it stopped. Okay, there it goes. I'm not gonna
And
edit
we're
this.
back.
I'm not gonna edit this at all. But I am KnewNeverYou. And if you didn't know, now you do.